"Get out of here, you despicable woman. You're a nobody." Those were the words my daughter Rachel screamed in my face right at her engagement party in front of all the guests. She threw me out of the house like tossing out a trash bag. She had no idea that I, Margaret, 70 years old, had just sold my company for $34 million. That day, I chose silence. I only said, "All right, honey." Then I left without arguing. The next morning, I moved to my lakeside cabin in Montana. 3 weeks later, she would be on her knees begging me for forgiveness. It all started when I arrived at the house to attend Rachel's engagement party with Henry. I brought an expensive gift, a genuine pearl necklace I bought in New York. I was excited to share that special moment with my only daughter, but the moment I walked in, I saw the sneering looks. Guests whispered. Henry pretended not to see me, and Rachel acted as if my presence embarrassed her. "What are you doing here, Mom?" she asked coldly when I stepped up to congratulate her. "I came to celebrate with you, honey. Today is your engagement." Rachel looked me up and down, scrutinizing my simple brown dress and worn shoes. She had no idea that beneath that modest appearance was a woman who could buy everything in that room without blinking. "Look, Mom," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "This is an elegant party for important people. You can't show up dressed like a cleaner and pretend you fit in." Those words were like knives. A few people started snickering. Henry walked over with a malicious smile. "Miss Margaret, I think it's better if you head home. This isn't your space." I stayed calm, but inside my heart was torn apart. "I just wanted to give you this." I held out the box with the pearl necklace. Rachel took it without even opening it. "Thanks, but next time check in before you come. Not every event is for everyone." The humiliation peaked. 40. People stared at me like a stranger in my own daughter's life, but worse was still to come. Barbara, Henry's mother, approached with an air of superiority. "Dear Miss Margaret, I understand you want the best for Rachel, but she's now part of our family, a family with status. Perhaps it would be prudent for you to keep a certain distance." That sentence was the last straw. Rachel nodded, siding with her future mother-in-law. "Mom, Mrs. Barbara is right. I need you to understand your place. I'm no longer the girl who depended on you. I have a prosperous life, a bright future, and honestly, your presence embarrasses me." My whole world collapsed. I remembered the years of working myself to exhaustion to give her the best education, all I sacrificed so she would never lack anything. I sold my first apartment to pay for her college tuition. I gave up relationships to devote everything to her, and now she treated me like a burden. "Embarrasses you?" I repeated, my voice trembling. Guests edged closer like they were watching a show. Rachel put her hands on her hips, defiant. "Exactly, Mom. Embarrassing. Look around. These are successful entrepreneurs and top professionals. What do you bring to the conversation? What could you possibly say to them?" Henry cut in, voice icy. "Let's be blunt, Miss Margaret. You rent an apartment, you have no savings, no higher degree. Rachel deserves to be around people at her level." Each word was a precise stab, designed to humiliate me in public. Barbara gently added another dose of poison. "It's nothing personal, dear. We simply think Rachel should focus on her new life without distractions from the past." The word distractions sounded like an emotional death sentence. Rachel stepped closer, eyes full of contempt. "Mom, I'll say this clearly so you finally understand. I don't want you at my wedding. I don't want you in my new life. You belong to the past, and that's where you should stay." The room fell silent. 40 pairs of eyes were fixed on me, waiting for my reaction. I felt my soul shatter, but deep inside, a voice long dormant began to awaken. For the first time, my daughter had crossed a line with no return. In that moment, I decided I would never swallow my pride again. "Fine, honey," I replied, so calm it surprised even me. "You're right. I'm no longer part of your life." I picked up my bag, turned around, and walked to the door. Behind me were snide laughs and whispers. Poor woman. How pathetic. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a decision that would change everything. I cried like I hadn't in decades, but amid the tears, something powerful rose up. A cold, clear fury. A will that had slept too long. I opened the secret drawer in my desk where I kept documents no one knew about. Bank statements, property titles, investment certificates. $34 million waiting for my command. Rachel had never known who her mother really was. To her, I was just a poor, pitiful old woman. The truth was the opposite. For 40 years, I quietly built a financial empire. While she studied and enjoyed herself, I invested every dollar I earned. Real estate in 3 states, shares in major American corporations, high-yield investment funds, all solely in my name. At first light, I called my attorney, Austin. "I need to see you immediately. It's time to activate the plan we prepared years ago." Austin was the only one who knew my true financial situation. He handled all my transactions, protected my assets, and kept the secret for decades. "You're finally planning to reveal the fortune?" he asked. "Not exactly." I smiled faintly. "I'm going to disappear for a while, but before that, I want Rachel to learn a lesson she'll never forget." Austin understood immediately. He knew the full story of my sacrifices for my child and how much I had suffered in silence. That morning, I packed only the essentials: 3 suitcases of simple clothes, a few personal documents, and some photos of Rachel as a child. I left everything else as it was. I wanted it to look like I had left as a defeated, humiliated woman, while the truth was entirely different. As I packed, I remembered the day Rachel was born. I was 30, single, and decided to adopt her when no one else wanted to take her home. The first years were brutally hard. I worked 3 jobs to support her. I studied at night to advance. I gave up my personal life to devote myself completely to her. Every dollar I earned, I split in 2, half for basic expenses, the other half invested to secure our future. Rachel never knew she was adopted. I told her her father had passed away when she was a baby. She never questioned it, never asked for details. We were simply a family of 2. I poured my whole heart into being the best mother I could be. Maybe it still wasn't enough. I called Elliot, my trusted accountant. "Transfer $5 million into the account in Montana right now, and prepare the paperwork to activate the properties in New York, Florida, and California. I'll be gone for an indefinite time." Elliot had worked with me for 20 years. He knew that once I decided, it was final. "What if Rachel asks where you are?" he asked cautiously. "Tell her her mother was exactly what she thought, a woman with no resources who left in shame." I answered coldly. "But Elliot, keep all my assets secure. I may need them very soon." Before leaving, I wrote a letter not to be sent immediately. "Dear Rachel, for 70 years I've lived for others. First for your grandparents, then for you. I never asked what I truly wanted for myself. Yesterday you gave me the answer. I want dignity, I want respect, and if I can't have them with you, I'll seek them elsewhere. Your mother, who will no longer be a burden." The car I ordered arrived at 6 a.m., taking me straight to the private Mainau airport. But before leaving, I made one last call. "Henry," I said when he picked up in surprise, "This is Margaret. Just wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" he stammered. "For showing me who you really are and for showing me what my daughter becomes when she's with you." I hung up before he could answer. The private jet was waiting on the runway. Destination: Bozeman, Montana. The lakeside cabin in Montana was the perfect hideout for planning my next move, but before stepping onto the plane stairs, I made one more decision. I called Mary, Rachel's housekeeper. "Mary, this is Margaret. Can you do me a favor?" Unlike my own daughter, Mary had always been kind to me. "Of course, ma'am. What do you need?" "I want you to keep an eye on everything that happens in that house for the next few weeks. If anything important happens, call me at this number." On the plane, I opened my tablet and reviewed my accounts. $34 million strategically allocated. Properties in Miami, New York, San Francisco, and of course my beautiful lakeside cabin in Montana where no one would find me until I chose to reappear. As the plane flew across the American sky for the first time in years, I smiled. Rachel had gotten exactly what she wanted, to get rid of the annoying mother. But soon enough, she would realize she had made the biggest mistake of her life. The lakeside cabin was as quiet as a secret base. From the window, I could see the still water and distant mountains scenery that untangled my thoughts. I bought this place years ago as an investment. Now it became my headquarters for what would come next. The first week, I simply rested and let things settle. In the second week, Mary called with news that rekindled my fury. "Miss Margaret," her voice was anxious, "you need to know what's happening. Rachel is telling everyone you left because you couldn't afford the cost of living. She says you were a financial as Margaret. Burden. So you disappeared." "What else is she saying?" I asked, feeling my chest heat up. "She says you didn't have a single dollar saved, that you lived on loans, and when reality hit, you ran. Henry is telling people at work that his mother-in-law is trouble and doesn't know her place. And Mrs. Barbara." Mary hesitated. "She's throwing a party to celebrate that you're not here anymore." My hands trembled with outrage. Not only had I been publicly humiliated, they were smearing my reputation to cast themselves as the heroes of the story. Rachel treated my departure like her personal victory. I couldn't let it slide. That night, I called Austin. "I want you to investigate everything about Henry and his family. I need to know where their money comes from, what businesses they have, whether there are debts, enemies, secrets, everything." Austin was an excellent attorney with connections everywhere. "Find me a private investigator too," I continued. "Do it. I need photos, videos, recordings. Document every move Rachel and Henry make over the next few weeks. But be absolutely discreet. They can't know we're watching." 3 days later, Austin called back with information that blew up in my face. "Margaret, I found something on Henry. His company is on the verge of bankruptcy. He owes about $3 million to various suppliers, and the bank is threatening to foreclose on his office mortgage. He's been propping up appearances with borrowed money," Austin said. "Does Rachel know any of this?" I asked, curiosity rising. "According to my sources, she has no idea. Henry's been lying to her about his finances. In fact, he was counting on you leaving some inheritance to save his business. That's why he went ballistic when you left without leaving anything. Ironically, Henry despised me for supposedly being poor, while the one who was actually broke was him, and my daughter, the one who threw me out for being embarrassing, was about to marry a man who couldn't even pay his own debts. But the most valuable intel came a week later. The investigator sent me a video that could change everything. Henry was at an upscale restaurant with a young woman. It clearly wasn't a business meeting. They kissed, held hands, behaved like lovers. The video date was after his engagement to Rachel. Perfect, I murmured as I watched it a third time. Exactly what I needed. But before using it, I wanted to test one more thing, to see how far my daughter's cruelty would go. I called Rachel from an unknown number, pretending to be a social worker. "Miss Rachel, we're looking for your mother, Miss Margaret. We have some important documents for her." "My mother doesn't live here anymore," Rachel said coldly. "She left because she couldn't take care of herself. I assume she's in some nursing home or something. I'm not responsible for her." Her words cut me like knives. She didn't even bother to pretend to care. "Do you have any number where we can reach her? This concerns a family inheritance," I deliberately emphasized. Rachel laughed cruelly. "An inheritance? My mother never had wealthy relatives." "You must be mistaken. And even if it were true, she's no longer part of my life. Try somewhere else." I hung up, tears streaming yet inside. My resolve had turned to steel. My daughter had signed her own sentence. She didn't just cast me out of her life. She was willing to deny even the possibility that I had an inheritance. Time for her to meet the real Margaret. That night, in the study of my lakeside house, I began sketching my response plan. First, dig deeper into Henry's finances. Second, use the cheating video at the perfect moment. Third, return to the city when they least expect it, not as the woman who left in humiliation, but as the powerful woman I truly am. I called Elliot and laid it out. "Prepare all. The files on my real estate and investment portfolio. We'll soon need irrefutable proof of my assets." "Are you planning to reveal the fortune?" Elliot asked. "Not just that." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "I'm going to give them the most expensive lesson of their lives." The plan took shape. Rachel wanted to get rid of the embarrassing mother. Soon she would understand. She had pushed away the only person who loved her unconditionally, and by the time she realized it, it would be too late to beg forgiveness. By the 4th week in Montana, news came that made me even more determined to seek justice. Mary called, panic in her voice. "Miss Margaret, you have to hear this. Rachel is planning to sell the apartment you used to live in." "How is that possible?" I was stunned. "That apartment is in my name. She's telling everyone you signed a power of attorney before you left, that you were so desperate you handed everything to her so you wouldn't be a burden." My blood boiled. Not only were they lying about why I left, now they were trying to steal my property. But Rachel had made a fatal mistake. That apartment was just a minor asset I had intentionally kept modest, so no one would suspect my true financial strength. "Mary," I said, voice calm but icy, "I need you to do this for me. Record every conversation you can when Rachel talks about my supposed poverty, when she mentions the forged power of attorney, when she mocks me capture it all." That afternoon, I called Austin. "Rachel is trying to sell an asset that doesn't belong to her using forged documents. Initiate legal proceedings immediately." "Sue for fraud?" Austin asked. "Not yet. Let her sink deeper into the lies. When she's fully exposed, we strike." At the same time, the investigator sent more devastating information on Henry. Not only was he broke and cheating, he had also been using Rachel's name to apply for loans, without her knowledge. My daughter was about to marry a con man who could drag her into financial ruin. For a moment, I felt tempted to warn her. No matter what, she was still my daughter. But I remembered her words. "You're an embarrassment. I don't want you in my new life." She had made her choice, and now she would live with the consequences. The 5th week brought the lowest blow. Mary sent an audio clip that pierced my heart. It was Rachel talking with her friends at her bachelorette party. "Your mom isn't coming to the wedding, right?" one asked. Thank God she's not, Rachel sneered. She finally realized she doesn't belong in my life. She's pathetic, always trying to impress people with cheap gifts. Another friend chimed in. Rachel kept going, cruel as ever. A 70-year-old woman who never had anything, always fantasizing she was important. Reality finally slapped her, and she slunk off with her tail between her legs. Henry says she's probably out begging somewhere. Their laughter felt like poison-tipped blades in my ears. My own daughter was turning her mother's pain into entertainment. That night I cried for the last time. At dawn, sadness had hardened into something far stronger, an iron will. I called Austin with new orders. Book the presidential suite at the most expensive hotel in the city. Hire a discreet security team and a professional photographer. It's time to return. Are you sure this is the right time? He asked. More than sure. It's time for Rachel to meet her real mother. Before flying, I prepared one special thing. I called my trusted stylist in New York. I need a complete transformation: hair, makeup, wardrobe. I want to appear as the successful woman I am. I also hired a private driver with a new model Mercedes and a small entourage to make an entrance no one would forget. In the 6th week, while Rachel rushed to finalize her wedding details, I finished, sharpening the last points of my plan. The investigator confirmed Henry had scheduled Rachel at a notary's office the day after the wedding, apparently to get her to sign documents that would make her responsible for all his debts. My daughter had no idea she was about to marry her own financial abyss. Are you going to warn her? Austin asked when I showed him the evidence. She chose to cut me out of her life, I said coldly. Now she'll learn that decisions have consequences and that the woman she despised was the only one who ever truly protected her. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote 3 letters. One to Rachel to be delivered at the perfect moment, one to Henry as a declaration of war, and one to Barbara so she would pay for her part in humiliating me. Every word was calculated for maximum emotional impact. The plan was complete. I would return 2 days before the wedding. I would stay at the most luxurious hotel in the city and make a series of public appearances that would leave everyone stunned. Rachel wanted to get rid of the embarrassing mother. Very soon, she would face a woman who could buy and sell her entire new family without blinking. As I packed my finest jewelry and the designer gowns I had tucked away for years, I smiled in anticipation. The little girl who once called me Mom with all her love was about to discover she had made the most expensive mistake of her life. The return unfolded exactly as planned, shocking, elegant, and completely unexpected. The black Mercedes pulled up in front of the Grand Palace Hotel, the most luxurious in the city, while a team of bellmen hurried to handle the luggage. I stepped out, fully transformed, freshly cut and styled hair by a top New York expert, a sleek red dress worth more than most people's annual salary, and authentic jewelry that sparkled under the lobby lights. The front desk clerk immediately recognized me as someone important, even if she didn't yet know who I was. "Welcome, ma'am. Your presidential suite is ready." As the private elevator took me up, I could feel the curious, admiring glances from the other guests. After 6 weeks of mourning a child who was still alive, I finally felt myself return to who I truly was, a woman of inner strength and power. That afternoon, exactly as planned, I decided to make my first public appearance. I knew well the places Rachel and her crowd frequented. The first stop was the most expensive fashion boutique in the city, the one Barbara often shopped at. It was time for the lady who once called me a distraction from the past to see who I really was. I walked into the boutique like a quiet storm. The staff came over at once, recognizing the look of a big spender. The manager smiled respectfully. "How can we help you, ma'am?" I answered succinctly. "Show me your most exclusive collection. Price isn't an issue." As I was looking over designer dresses priced in the thousands of dollars, a familiar voice sounded behind me. "Margaret?" Barbara's eyes widened, clearly unable to believe what she was seeing. I turned slowly, a calculated smile on my lips. "Barbara," I said, cool and composed. "What a surprise to see you here. But you left," she stammered. "Supposed to be what, exactly?" I cut in politely. "Begging somewhere? Living in a nursing home? Starving?" Her cheeks flushed as she realized I'd heard all the lies they'd been spreading. Just then, an associate brought over the 3 most expensive dresses. "Ma'am, these are our most exclusive pieces. This Valentino is $8,000. Versace is $10,000. And Chanel, limited edition, $15,000. Without blinking, I pointed to all 3. "I'll take them. And show me your jewelry collection as well." Barbara stood frozen, watching me spend in 5 minutes more than she saw in a year. "I don't understand," she muttered. "Rachel said you had no money, that you were a burden." "Dear Barbara," I replied as I tried on a diamond necklace, "it seems my daughter doesn't know her mother as well as she thought. As for the modest apartment and simple clothes, that's called restraint," I explained patiently, with a hint of disdain. "Some of us need to be sure we're loved for who we are, not for what we have. Perhaps I failed that test with my own daughter." The manager returned with a tray of jewelry sparkling like stars. "Which set do you prefer, ma'am?" I chose a diamond necklace, bracelet, and earrings worth $35,000. "Perfect. Put everything on my black card." When I pulled out the no-limit card, Barbara nearly fainted. After I signed, I smiled. "Barbara, please pass along a message to Rachel for me. Tell her the embarrassing mother is back, and on her wedding day, she'll receive a surprise she'll never forget." Are you going to the wedding?" Her voice trembled. "Oh, no," I smiled slyly. She made it very clear I wasn't welcome. But that doesn't mean I can't send a gift. I left the boutique, leaving Barbara bewildered and terrified. I knew that in less than an hour Rachel would get a frantic call about our run-in. That was exactly what I wanted, for her to know I had returned but not be able to guess my intentions. That evening, from the presidential suite, I called Elliot. "Are all the files ready?" "All set," he replied. "Property titles, statements, recordings, the investigators' photos, everything arranged chronologically for maximum impact." "Good. The wedding is tomorrow. It's time for Rachel to know who her mother really is." Before sleeping, I made one more call. "Mary, how are things at the house?" "Miss Margaret, it's chaos." Barbara rushed back to tell Rachel about the boutique. Rachel is furious and confused. Henry is nervous. No one understands how you could spend so freely. "Did they say anything about canceling the wedding?" "Not yet, ma'am, but they're fighting a lot." Rachel yelled at Barbara for lying about you. Barbara insists she didn't understand what was going on. That information was music to my ears. The chaos had begun, and tomorrow would only be the opening act of a play that would end brutally for those who betrayed me. Looking out at the city lights, I remembered the little girl who once hugged me and called me the best mom in the world. That little girl was gone, replaced by a woman who tossed her mother out like trash. Tomorrow, that woman would pay the price for her ingratitude. The wedding morning was perfect for my plan. While Rachel prepared for what she believed would be the happiest day of her life, I finalized the details of the nightmare designed just for her. From the presidential suite, I coordinated everything like a general before a decisive battle. The war had begun, and I held all the weapons. First, I sent a special gift to the church, a spectacular arrangement of white orchids with a card that read, "For Rachel, on the most important day of your life. With love, the mother who is no longer a burden." I knew those few words would make her uneasy, but that was only the appetizer. While Rachel slipped into her wedding dress in her room, I prepared for my entrance. The dress I chose was a masterpiece, an elegant black Armani worth more than their entire wedding budget. The jewelry to match cost the price of a house. Every detail was calculated to display power, presence, and reclaimed dignity. By early afternoon, as the ceremony began, I activated Phase 2. I called Austin. "It's time for the press conference. Are you sure? After this, there's no turning back." I've never been more sure. It's time the whole city knows the truth about Rachel's perfect family. The press conference was held right in the hotel's grand hall at the exact time of the ceremony. Reporters from major outlets gathered, drawn by the promise of a bombshell about one of the season's most talked-about weddings. When I walked in, the room fell silent. The transformation was so complete that many didn't recognize me at first. "My name is Margaret," I said clearly and firmly. "I'm Rachel's mother, the bride currently having her ceremony at Street Anthony's. I'm here to set the record straight about the lies that have been spread about me." Camera flashes exploded as reporters realized they had a big story. In recent weeks, my daughter has been telling everyone that her mother was a destitute woman who left in shame because she couldn't support herself. I paused, lifting the first documents. The truth is very different. I own a business ecosystem worth $34 million. The murmurs swelled into a roar. They pressed in to photograph the documents. Property titles in 3 places, bank statements, investment certificates, all authentic, all verifiable. Completely dismantling the story Rachel told, she pushed me out because she was ashamed that her mother supposedly lacked social status. I spoke calmly but with heavy sorrow. What she didn't know, the entire cost of this lavish wedding, the education she received, the comforts she enjoyed came from the company I built over 40 years. Day and night. Austin stepped to the mic with more hard-hitting files. "We have evidence Rachel has been trying to sell assets that don't belong to her using forged paperwork. We also have recordings in which she mocks her mother's poverty and celebrates her departure as a liberation." An audio clip Mary recorded echoed through the hall. "Thank God she's gone. Always trying to impress with cheap gifts. Henry says she's probably out begging somewhere." The room sank into heavy silence. I continued, knowing the final blow would be devastating. Rachel's fiancé Henry is not only bankrupt, but has used Rachel's name to obtain large loans she knows nothing about. I have evidence that tomorrow, after the honeymoon, he plans to have her sign documents to shoulder his debts, amounting to many millions of dollars. Reporters fired questions. Why reveal this now? Because a mother can forgive ingratitude, but she cannot stand by and watch her daughter be swindled and financially destroyed by a man who sees her as his monetary lifeline. "Will you reconcile with your daughter?" another asked. My daughter chose to cast me out, calling me despicable and a nobody. Now she will live with the consequences of removing from her life the only person who loved her unconditionally. Right then, my phone rang. Mary called from the church. "Miss Margaret, it's chaos here. Someone just tipped them off about the press conference. Rachel is hysterical. Henry is pale as a ghost. Guests are leaving the church to check the news on their phones. Did they finish the ceremony?" "Yes, but the reception has been canceled. Rachel is screaming that she wants to see you immediately. Tell her she knows where to find me." The press conference ended with a message I knew would make headlines. To the mothers watching, love, but don't let love become self-destruction. And to ungrateful children, the parents who sacrificed to raise you deserve respect, not humiliation. As I walked out to applause and flashing lights, I smiled with satisfaction. Part 1 of the plan was complete. Rachel wanted a perfect wedding without the embarrassing mother. What she got was a ruined wedding and a public scandal that would haunt her for a long time. I didn't have to wait long for the confrontation. 2 hours after the press conference, Rachel stormed into my presidential suite like a furious cyclone. She convinced hotel. Security, she was. My daughter, and she was. Though part of me wished she weren't my child, Rachel still burst straight into the room without knocking, still in her wedding dress, makeup smeared with angry, humiliated tears. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed from the doorway. "You ruined my wedding. You destroyed the most important day of my life." I sat calmly on the suite sofa, sipping tea as if nothing had happened. "Hello, Rachel," I said, my voice calm to the point of icy. "You look beautiful, just a bit agitated. How was the ceremony?" "Don't be sarcastic with me," she shouted, stepping closer, fists clenched. "All the guests left. The papers are blasting it everywhere. My reputation is ruined." "Interesting," I replied, still unmoved. "A few weeks ago you said the exact same things about me, that I embarrassed you, that I ruined your reputation, that you didn't want me in your life. That was different." "How different?" I stood up for the first time, cutting her off. "Different as in when you humiliate your mother in front of 40 people, it's fine, but when I tell the truth in front of 40 reporters, it's not fine?" My voice stayed even, but my eyes burned with anger suppressed for decades. Rachel was speechless for a few seconds, the first time in her life she saw her mother neither apologizing nor begging for forgiveness. "You're my mother," she finally said, as if that explained everything. "You were supposed to protect me, not betray me." "Right," I smiled bitterly. "I am your mother, and for 30 years I protected you, sacrificed everything. I gave up my own happiness for you. And how did you repay me? By kicking me out of your life like trash." "But the money," she cried, desperate. "Why didn't you tell me you had money?" "Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I have," I answered, real sadness showing. "I wanted to be sure that love was real, not bought. It seems I was wrong on both counts." Right then, Henry appeared in the doorway, sweating, face white as a sheet. "Miss Margaret," he stammered, "we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding." "Ah, the groom," I said, caustic. "The one who said this wasn't my space, who suggested I leave because I was a burden to my own daughter. I didn't know," he faltered. "You didn't know I had money, true," I cut in. "But you knew you were broke. You knew you had a mistress, and you knew you planned to use my daughter to save your dying business." Henry turned pale. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and opened the investigator's video. Henry kissing a woman in a fancy restaurant. "Do you recognize her?" I said coldly. "According to my investigation, you've been seeing her throughout your engagement to Rachel." Rachel snapped her head toward her husband, eyes wide. "Is that true?" Her voice cracked. Henry tried to deny it, but I continued with the proof. "Here are the documents you plan to have her sign tomorrow, contracts that would make her responsible for more than $5 million of your debt." "Fake." "Those documents are fake!" Henry yelled. "Fake, huh?" I smirked. "Austin, come in." My attorney stepped in, a thick file in hand. "Henry," Austin said, professional and steady, "these documents were obtained directly from your notary's office. All of them are fully authenticated." Rachel collapsed into a chair, finally grasping the disaster she had brought on herself. She hadn't just driven out her wealthy mother. She had married a con man planning to drag her into a pit of debt. "No way," she whispered, over and over. "There's more." I didn't relent. "Henry, tell your wife about the loans you took using her name as guarantor. Tell her about the mortgage you placed on the apartment she thinks is hers. Tell her about the debts the collectors will force you to pay before the end of the month." Henry went silent, his silence confessing everything. Rachel looked at him, horror growing by the second. "Is it all true?" "Rachel, I can explain." His unfinished sentence was cut off by a slap that echoed through the suite. "You used me? You lied to me?" "I married a liar and a fraud." "Why did you choose to marry a man who despises your mother?" I asked quietly. "Every decision has consequences, my daughter. And you chose to believe him instead of standing with your mother." Rachel turned to me, tears of despair streaming down her face. "Mom, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Can you help me?" "Help?" I tilted my head, genuinely curious. "Like when I begged you not to throw me out of your life? Like when I pleaded to be allowed at your wedding? Do you remember what you said? You're no longer part of my life. You belong to the past and should stay there." I didn't know you had money," she cried. "And that's exactly the problem," I said sadly. "Your love for me depended on my bank account. When you thought I was poor, you tossed me aside. Now that you know I'm wealthy, you want me back. That isn't love, Rachel, that's convenience." The silence that followed was crushing. For the first time, Rachel faced the full consequences. Losing her mother, marrying a fraud, public disgrace. All because she chose money and status over unconditional love. Henry tried to slip away, but Austin had discreetly called hotel security and the police. Charges for fraud and document forgery were already underway. "Mom," Rachel trembled, "I know I was awful. But you're my mother. You have to help me. I'm about to fall apart. You have to help me, huh?" I repeated, mocking, "Like how you helped me when you threw me out. When you called me despicable and a nobody? But I'm your daughter," she screamed. "You have to love me unconditionally." "You're right," I replied, calm as a blade. "I loved you unconditionally for 30 years. Asked for nothing. I gave you everything, sacrificed my life, and when I needed you, most needed love and support, you kicked me out like trash." My phone rang. The investigator, "Miss Margaret, Henry just tried to drain the joint account under Rachel's name. He transferred the money to an offshore account in the Caribbean. Your husband just emptied your savings," I said plainly to Rachel. "He transferred it 10 minutes ago." Rachel went green. What? "That's right," I nodded. "The man you chose over your mother, the one you publicly humiliated me for, just left you with nothing." Henry, who'd been waiting for a chance, suddenly shouted, "This is your fault. Everything was fine until you showed up with your lies." "Which lies?" I laughed coldly. "My $34 million? Your bankruptcy? The mistress? The forged documents? Everything has proof. You ruined my life." "No," I said firmly. "You ruined your own life when you decided to scam my daughter. I simply made sure you paid the price." The police entered the suite and cuffed Henry. Charges: fraud, document forgery, identity theft. As they led him away, he shouted back at Rachel, "This isn't over. You'll pay for the money I lost because of you." His true colors finally showed. "Mom," Rachel sobbed when it was just the two of us. I understand you're angry. I understand you want to punish me. But please, don't abandon me. I have no one. You still have Barbara, I smirked. The lady who told me to keep my distance because I lacked status. I'm sure she'll help you now that you're the daughter-in-law of a criminal. Barbara already turned her back, Rachel whispered, ashamed. When she learned about the scandal, she said her family couldn't be associated with me. She banned me from their house. Surprised? I said coldly. Turns out your new family fled at the first wave. Unlike your mother, who endured 30 years of ingratitude and only left when you drove her out. Right then Mary appeared with worse news. Miss Rachel, Henry's creditors have already come to the house. They took everything: furniture, the TV, the computer, even the wedding dress. They say you signed as guarantor without realizing it. Rachel completely collapsed. In less than a few hours, she lost her husband, money, belongings, reputation, and her in-laws. What am I supposed to do? She murmured, stunned. I have nothing. No one. Now you know exactly how I felt when you threw me out of your life, I answered without a shred of pity. The difference is, I was 70 after 30 years of loving you unconditionally. You're 30, and you've just learned the lesson that every choice has a price. Is there no way for you to forgive me? She begged. To win back your love? My love never disappeared, I said sadly. But my respect, my trust, and my willingness to keep being your victim, that's gone forever. Then, what will happen to me? You'll learn to live on your own, just as I had to when you cast me out. I stood, closing the conversation. You'll get a job, pay your own bills, and face the consequences of choosing money and status over real love. But Mom, I'm no longer your mom, I cut in, firm. You're the one who said I'm no longer in your life. The mother who sacrificed everything for you died the day you called me despicable and tossed me out of your life. I am Margaret, a successful woman, and I do not tolerate disrespect. Rachel left my suite in tears, finally understanding she had lost the most precious thing she had, her mother's unconditional love. But it was too late for regret. Some wounds don't heal, and some words can't be taken back. She had chosen her path and would live with the consequences from now on. 6 months later, my life was peaceful in a way I never expected. From my lakeside cabin in Montana, I sipped my morning coffee and gazed at the snow-capped mountains in the distance. Absolute tranquility, broken only by birdsong and the wind threading through the trees. For the first time in 70 years, I was living for myself. Mary stopped by once a month to bring news from the city. Rachel had found a job as a receptionist at a dental clinic, earning just enough to rent a small apartment in a modest neighborhood. Henry was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and swindling. Barbara lost her social standing when it came out she had covered up her son's crimes. Rachel asks about you, Mary said during her most recent visit. Every day, I replied evenly, but that's no longer my concern. She made her choice when she threw me out. Now she has to walk that road alone. Mary nodded, though I could still see a flicker of pity in her eyes for my daughter. Justice came both complete and ruthless. The press followed the story for months, turning it into a symbol of filial ingratitude and its price. Rachel lost not only her status, but most of her friends. They abandoned her as the scandal went national. Austin still called weekly with legal updates. Henry appealed, but it was denied, he said in our latest call. He even tried to sue Rachel for emotional damages, and the judge tossed it as ridiculous. Pathetic, I said evenly. Even in prison, he keeps blaming others. Have you thought about reaching out to Rachel? Austin asked cautiously. Elliot says she's been asking the bank staff how to send you a letter. I haven't, I said, resolute. That woman died to me the day she called me despicable. If she wants to contact me, she can use official channels like any stranger. Austin's question left me pensive for days. Did I miss my daughter? The answer was complicated. I missed the child she once was, the teenager who clung to me after nightmares, the young woman who called me her best friend. But the woman who threw her mother out like trash, I did not miss her at all. One afternoon, while sorting an old photo box, I found a letter Rachel wrote at 8 years old. Dear Mom, you're the best mom in the world. When I grow up, I want to be like you, strong, hardworking, and loving. I love you more than the stars and the moon. Tears fell as I read those innocent lines. That night I wrote in my journal, that child would have defended her mother against anyone. She would have valued sacrifice and love over money and status. But she grew into a woman who chose cruelty over compassion. I cannot forgive the woman, for the sake of the child she once was. In the fall, Elliot visited with financial updates and something else. Rachel tried to reach out, he said urgently. She asked if there's any chance to reconcile. She says she understands exactly what she did wrong and is willing to do anything to regain your love. Anything? I said wryly. Including turning back time so she never called her own mother despicable? She's depleted, Elliot pleaded. Physically, emotionally, financially, noticeably thinner, looks at least 10 years older. Mary says she cries every day. Good, I answered, so cold it surprised even me. Now she knows how I felt for 6 weeks when I thought I'd lost my only child to ingratitude. On the anniversary of my departure, I was in New York buying art for my new private gallery. As I wandered the museums, I remembered all the times I dreamed of traveling, but put it aside to pay Rachel's tuition. Now I was 71, a multimillionaire, and finally able to do everything I'd postponed for, motherhood. That night, from my suite at the plaza, I called Mary for an update. Miss Margaret, she said sadly, last week Rachel fainted at work. They took her to the hospital for exhaustion and stress. What did the doctors say? I asked, tone unchanged. Her emotional state is severe. I expected that, I replied. Cruel choices bring cruel consequences. She asks every day if you'll forgive her, Mary pleaded. She says she'd rather die than live knowing she's lost her mother forever. She should have thought of that before she threw me out. I kept my cold demeanor. For weeks after her betrayal, I'd have preferred death too. The difference is, I didn't deserve that pain. I hung up and stepped onto the balcony to watch the New York lights, the city of dreams. Ironically enough, I had found peace, prosperity, and dignity. But I had lost forever the illusion of a child's unconditional love. It was a high price, but it was the price Rachel set on our relationship when she chose to publicly humiliate her mother. As I wrote the final lines of my memoir, I concluded, I don't regret adopting a child no one else wanted. I don't regret sacrificing 30 years of my life for her happiness. The only thing I regret is not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced as self-destruction. Unconditional love does not mean unconditionally accepting mistreatment. I closed the manuscript and locked it in the safe. The story of Margaret, the self-sacrificing, humiliated mother, had ended. In her place stood Margaret, the woman who is free, prosperous, and at peace. For the first time in 71 years, that was enough. 5 years have passed since that fateful day. At 75, I stood on the porch of my new villa on the Carmel coast, watching the crimson sunset over the Pacific. The peace I'd found was so deep that sometimes I had to work to remember the woman who once shattered Pain had become wisdom, betrayal, liberation. My life blossomed in ways I'd never imagined. The art gallery I opened in Santa Fe became one of the region's most respected. My investment portfolio grew to $50 million. More important than money was the wealth of the soul, the contentment of finally living for myself. Austin still visited quarterly, not just as my attorney, but as a loyal friend through the years. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd reacted differently?" he asked on his latest visit. "If you had forgiven her immediately and kept being the self-sacrificing mother?" "Every day," I said honestly, and every day I reached the same conclusion. I would have died inside. I would have kept being the victim of my own kindness, teaching Rachel she could mistreat me without consequence. In the end, I did her a favor by showing her that actions have a price. Mary stopped visiting after the 3rd year. News about Rachel had become too painful for both of us. The last I heard, she had attempted suicide twice, lost several jobs due to depression, and was living nearly penniless in a shabby studio. Guilt was literally consuming her. "Don't you feel compassion?" Mary once asked. "All the compassion in the world," I replied. "But compassion doesn't erase the harm done. I spent 70 years having compassion for everyone except myself. It was time to change that." One spring afternoon sorting mail, I found an envelope that had arrived weeks earlier. My assistant had set it aside per my instructions. It was from Rachel. The shaky handwriting revealed the writer's state. I opened it for the first time in 5 years, more out of curiosity than nostalgia. "Dear Mom," the letter began, "I know I have no right to write to you after everything I've done. I know I no longer deserve to call you Mom, but every day I regret every cruel word I said. I understand if you down. Hate me, I hate myself too. I've lost everything. My marriage, money, friends, health, dignity. But the worst was losing your love. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just want you to know, your daughter died the day she called you despicable." The final lines made me shiver. "If one day you want to know what became of the little girl who once loved you more than her own life, look for me in the cemetery, because the woman who betrayed you can't live with what she's done. I love you, Mom. Forgive me, in another life." For the first time in 5 years, I felt panic. I called Austin immediately. "We have to find Rachel, fast. I'm afraid she'll hurt herself." "How do you want me to help?" he asked, surprised. "Make sure she gets professional psychological support anonymously." I hesitated. "That's all." 2 days later, Austin reported back. "We got there in time. She's in the hospital after another attempt. I transferred her to a highly reputable private psychiatric facility. The costs are covered by an anonymous donation, just as you requested." "Will she recover?" I asked. "The doctors are optimistic, but she'll need years of intensive therapy." "She desperately wants to see you," but I explained the benefactor wishes to remain anonymous. "Good," I exhaled. "I'm not ready, and perhaps never will be." A few months later, Austin brought good news. Rachel was responding well to treatment. Rachel admitted full responsibility for destroying her life. She didn't blame anyone else, not even Henry. Psychologists said it was the first step toward real recovery. She asked about me only once when told someone was paying for her treatment. She asked if it was me. When told they couldn't reveal that information, she said, "It doesn't matter who it is. Mom already did enough for me for 30 years. The rest I have to overcome on my own." Those words pierced to the core of my heart. For the first time in 5 years, Rachel showed the maturity and humility I had once hoped for. But it was too late for reconciliation. The wound was too deep, and I had built a new life for myself, one with no room for the old pain. A year later, I learned Rachel had been discharged. She applied to volunteer at a rehabilitation center for people struggling with addiction, helping those who had hit bottom like she had. According to reports, she worked with dedication, rarely spoke of her past, and showed special compassion for those who had lost their families through their own choices. Do you plan to contact her? Austin asked me over dinner. No, I answered firmly. She learned her lesson. I learned mine. We're two different women now. As I write these final lines in my journal at 76, I can say honestly, I regret nothing not loving unconditionally for 30 years and not cutting that love off when it became self-destruction. I understand that forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation, and loving someone sometimes means letting them go forever. Now, Rachel and I live in parallel worlds. She is rebuilding her life from the ashes of her mistakes. I am enjoying the rest of mine without the emotional burdens of the past. We both learned worthy lessons. She learned that words can destroy forever. I learned that it's never too late to choose yourself. Motherly love didn't die completely. It transformed into a wiser kind of love, loving from far enough away that it doesn't become a weakness again. In the end, the greatest lesson I could give my daughter is this: even the purest love has limits that cannot be crossed without permanent consequences. In the end, Margaret's story isn't about money or revenge, but about the boundaries of love. Loving your child with all your heart without trading away your dignity. Forgiveness is possible, but reconciliation isn't always necessary. When a standed would any while, relationship drives you to self-destruction. Leaving is also a form of love, loving yourself enough not to feed the wound. And then, when each person takes responsibility for their choices, pain slowly becomes lesson. Words can destroy, but resolve can save. And you, if you were in Margaret's place, where would you draw the line to protect your heart? What do you think is a fair boundary between unconditional love and self-respect? Share your perspective in the comments. Who knows, your story might be the mirror someone out there needs. If stories like this resonate with you, stay with us so you won't miss the next journeys where each of us can learn how to love, how to let go, and how to return to ourselves.